Hey guys, welcome back to the Perfect Tactic podcast. I'm your host Taron. I'm joined by Arvind and Zach today. Today we're going to kind of be discussing three youth talents that we believe can kind of break the bank in terms of football and kind of break world football, get up there with the top players like Haaland and Mbappe, players like that. But today I've got an expert in that topic. Today I've got the co-founder of Breaking the Lines, a huge company to do with football. And Zach, would you like to kind of explain to our listeners a bit about what you do and just explain a little bit about yourself in general, mate?
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm the co-creator of Breaking the Lines, which is a football website dedicated to providing high-quality analysis on all things football, really. So we do cover a lot of players and coaches, but we also have a bit of everything. We just posted a report on Valentino Livramento, a very promising talent in the Chelsea Cobham Academy. And we've got a lot of interesting articles coming up. So I basically just run Breaking Lines. And yeah, we've got a lot of cool stuff coming up in the coming weeks. So definitely make sure to keep an eye on that.
Cool. Yeah, it's really good to have you on. Check all of Zach's the links to Breaking the Lines. It's to everything in the description, Spotify, Apple, everything like that. But yeah, Arvin, I'm gonna go on to you now. How are you doing today? And are you looking forward to being on this pod today?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to being on the pod today. Obviously, today's a little bit of a different episode because we're talking about our rising talents, youth academies and stuff. So it's going to be exciting. Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm so gassed today. We've done a lot of videos about Chelsea, a lot of podcasts about Chelsea, the Premier League, Champions League. So today's going to be a lot different, and we're going to get straight into the first topic. So we're going to start by talking about the kind of three players that can kind of break world football that not many people know of, a bit under the radar players. So we're going to start with a really promising youth player in the Portuguese league, a really good player called Pedro Gonçalves. A lot of people may not have heard of him, but he's playing for Sporting Lisbon right now. He's kind of an inside left forward in the 3-4-3 at the minute. A goal that I can remember of him that was really good, I believe it was against Braga, where he went past like three players, laid it off to someone, laid it back to him and shot first time into the goal. So that was probably the best goal that I can remember that Gonçalves has scored. But yeah, 15 goals and 2 assists in 20 games for Gonçalves. He's a really good, talented player. And yeah, so Zach, I want to ask your opinion a bit about Gonçalves. Do you want to tell our listeners a bit about how he is and if he can really break the bank in terms of football?
Yeah, well, first off, just we have a really amazing analysis on Pedro Gonçalves coming up this week on Breaking Lines on the website, which is a really in detail article. So definitely make sure to check that out. And we've spoken a lot about him on the Corta Linhas podcast, a weekly podcast we do on Portuguese football on Breaking Lines. But yeah, I think that Pedro Gonçalves has been absolutely fantastic. There's an argument to be made that he's been the best player in the Portuguese league this season. Some people would say João Palhinha, a defensive midfielder on Sporting, or Sebastian Coates, who's been the defensive leader of Sporting. And both those are great answers. But I think that in general, I mean, when you look through the awards and look through in general the history, they tend to favor attacking players like Gonçalves. And to be fair, he is the top scorer in the Portuguese league. There were so many concerns when Bruno Fernandes had left Sporting for Manchester United. Just what are Sporting going to do now? Because so many games, so many years really, where he was just the heart and soul of that Sporting attack. And so a lot of questions over what they were going to do to replace him. They ended up bringing in a few players over the summer. Nuno Santos, they brought him in after a promising season at Rio Ave. Bruno Tabata as well from Portimonense. But the player who stood out the most has been Pedro Gonçalves, or Pote, as he's Pote, yeah. So same player, Pote. There are a lot of players who have that in Portugal, such as João Felipe, also known as Jota. But anyways, Pote has been just fantastic for Sporting. A player who can really make an impact, and even when he's not on his game, he'll still find a way to get on the score sheet. I think that's one attribute that he shares with Bruno Fernandes, although they are similar players. I think that his ability to get into goal scoring positions and definitely his awareness, I think, is one thing that has allowed him to flourish so much. In terms of that goal scoring product. And yeah, I think that he's also a fine playmaker, but in general, you see how he is constantly outperforming his XG. I think definitely says a lot about his ability as a finisher, and his ability to pop up into goal scoring areas. So in general, he's a very promising young talent at just 22 years old. He kind of bounced around a few academies. Wasn't what he didn't develop in any of Portugal's top 3 clubs, Porto, Benfica, or Sporting, which is somewhat rare. But it does happen. I believe he spent like 2 years at Braga before joining Valencia, and then he went to Wolves, obviously part of that Portuguese contingent. But then, and then I believe he went to newly promoted Famalicão. And so with Pote in the lineup, Famalicão, getting promotion to the Primera for the first time in, I think it was 21 years or something.
21 years, yeah.
And they started the season actually top of the league, dropped off a little bit, but we're still in the hunt for European football. Nearly got it until conceding a 95th minute equalizer on the final day. Just barely missed out on Europa League football to Rio Ave. And then, of course, Famalicão sold a lot of players, and a lot of the players who were on loan ended up leaving. And one of those players that were sold was Pedro Gonçalves to Sporting for a pretty low fee. I believe that Famalicão kept a decent sell-on clause. Not sure about that, but it would explain that with Wolves, the economic percentages of players, you might end up selling a 75% of the clause, but anyways, that's not important. But when you fast forward a few months down the line, Sporting are now top of the table. They've got a ridiculous gap at the top, and they're pretty much guaranteed to win the title at this point. On the other hand, Famalicão are just 1 point above last place, and they could be headed for relegation. So I'm not saying that he's the only reason why Famalicão are in the relegation zone or why Sporting are top of the table, but he's definitely a really big part of it.
Yeah, for sure. Gonçalves has been really, really good for Sporting this season. He signed for them, I believe, this season, 22 years of age. And he's one of them players you just pass the ball to. And very rarely in world football, you see the players you just pass the ball to, and you kind of hope for their individual talent to shine through. As a Chelsea fan, that was kind of Eden Hazard for me. He was a player that I literally idolized for so many years. You just pass the ball to him, he creates. But very quickly, before we move on to the second player, Zach, I just want to ask you, obviously, Bruno Fernandes has moved on to Man United now, and he's doing amazing. He's adapted to the Premier League really, really well, and he looks at home there. And a lot of people are doubting him, obviously coming from the Portuguese league, but he's adapted. I've already said that he's adapted really well. Do you think that Gonçalves can be as good as Bruno in the future? I know it's a very, very slim pickings to kind of judge from right now, but from an eye test from you, I know you watch a lot of Portuguese football. Do you think that Gonçalves can reach Bruno's heights in the future?
Yeah, I mean, they are different players in that Bruno Fernandes, while he has played on the wing, he's much more better utilized as playing behind the striker, as that midfielder. But in general, I guess their roles in team are somewhat similar. Bruno at 22 years old, I think he had just joined Sporting, or at Sampdoria, honestly, I'm not sure. So, but either way, he wasn't doing that great, right? He wasn't the Bruno Fernandes that we know. He was playing for Sampdoria, kind of having a bit role, and so when you compare that, when you compare what he was doing at 22 years old to what Pote is doing, and to be fair, Pote was also similar to Bruno at Sampdoria, kind of a raw gem that not many people knew about. I think there is definitely potential for him to become as good as Bruno Fernandes. I mean, Bruno is obviously one of the best players in the Premier League. I think that even his biggest critics would admit that. But at the end of the day, I think you have to do that on a consistent level, right? Bruno Fernandes, despite not winning the league title, he did win the Primeira Liga Player of the Year
Yeah,
in
he did.
that season, and that's because look, he was the best player in Portugal. It didn't matter that Sporting weren't competing for the title; he was still the best player in Portugal. And I think that Pote is the best player, best attacking player in Portugal. However, I do think that that one thing that he could learn from Bruno is, don't get tempted into a big move right away. You're at Sporting, you're at a club that's, one of the biggest teams in Portugal, a team that's going to be playing Champions League football next season, and that's going to end up breaking a 19-year title drought. This is a good place to be. So I think that Pote should stay at Sporting for 1 or 2 years potentially before considering the next big move. Because as tempting as a move to a Manchester United or a Tottenham may be, I think that consistency, especially with a player like Pote, who has kind of been moved around his entire career from places like Famalicão, Braga, Valencia. I think that staying in a place where you can just develop under a coach like Ruben Amorim, who just signed a new contract last week, and won't be leaving Sporting anytime soon, because he just got a very high buyout clause. So to be able to stay at a club for 1 or 2 years and then and develop under one coach, I think that's absolutely massive for a young player. And I think that's one thing where I think that's one thing where I guess Pote could learn from Bruno Fernandes. Obviously, Bruno didn't really have that same sort of stability at the coaching position that Pote will probably have if he stays at Sporting. He played under a lot of different coaches, but I think that that Pote will have a step up if he does decide to stay for 1 or 2 years at Sporting, and then of course, if he does continuously improve, Sporting will reap the benefits. They're not going to sell him for 30 million. They could sell him for 60 million or whatever.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point. At the minute, it does look like, as you said, when Bruno was 22 years old. I'm not going to try and pronounce Bruno Fernandes like you did, Zach. I don't think I can do a better job. But yeah, I think that when Bruno was 22 years old, that maybe he wasn't playing as well as Pedro Gonçalves is now. But he can't really let it go to his head. He needs to stay humble, keep his feet on the ground, and just keep improving at this stage. But yeah, we're going to kind of move away from the Portuguese league a bit. And Arvind, who's the next player that you want to discuss with Zach?
So this is a player that, because I'm a Bayern fan, I've been really very, very interested in seeing, his development since last season when the first lockdown started. And he's a player that scored against Bayern on his debut at the age of 17, had 4 goals and 4 assists this season, scored the win against Dortmund, and he goes by the name of Florian Wirtz. Now, I'd just like to ask, could Florian Wirtz be the talent that not many people see to be, as I see to be, as being world class or perhaps being better than Kai Havertz?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think Wirtz, yeah, I mean, similar to what we were discussing earlier with the Bruno Fernandes and the Pote comparisons, he's definitely one player who, I guess, because of his background, is automatically going to have that benchmark. Can he be as good as Kai Havertz? We recently published a few months ago a really good piece on Florian Wirtz on Breaking Lines, which just described basically his rise and his profile. And it is funny though how Bayer Leverkusen had spent a ton of money prior to Havertz leaving, just because they knew he was going to leave eventually, as well as after the departure, trying to find a replacement. They brought in players such as Karim Demirbay, Moussa Diaby, but it does seem like the player who has come closest to replacing his impact as that creative talisman has been Florian Wirtz, who came for basically next to nothing, as I think he was 16 or 17. And he's already broken several of Havertz's records that he set during his time at Leverkusen. I think that perhaps he's gone under the radar a little bit because Leverkusen's form has not been great over the past few months. But this is a very talented product who, similar, I guess, not quite as physical as Havertz yet, not as physically imposing, which is to be expected given his age. But he's incredibly intelligent, knows where to be to offer a passing lane, and just can really create a lot of danger playing in a variety of positions, especially in midfield. I do think that probably he will end up being maybe less attacking than Havertz, because I think that one of the things that makes Havertz such a good player is what we talked about, that physicality. I think that Wirtz will probably end up being less, he'll probably end up being inferior in that aspect. But I do think that his ability to maneuver the pressure and just basically combine with teammates, and I think that will allow him to, perhaps settle into an Ever Banega role, playing as that advanced playmaker, but really able to drop all around midfield. Whereas Havertz, we've seen in the past few months under Tuchel and Lampard, well, mostly Lampard, how he isn't that comfortable playing in midfield, and on the midfield trio. He's much more comfortable playing in the front three, which we saw yesterday against Everton. So I think that Wirtz's profile will be perhaps a bit different from Havertz, but they are very similar in the way they can just take control of a match and control the flow of a game for Leverkusen.
For sure, yeah. Wirtz is obviously a really talented player at the minute, and as a Chelsea fan, like watching Kai Havertz, 36 league goals before he left the Bundesliga, only at the age of 21. So yeah, I have big hopes for Havertz, but I understand that maybe Leverkusen fans and Bundesliga fans like Arvind maybe think that Wirtz is kind of the next coming of Havertz, the next replacement. But as I've seen Havertz, he's most comfortable as playing as maybe a false nine, as a cam, more up the pitch, and Wirtz is maybe someone who can play as a box-to-box centre mid, more of an 8. So maybe that's a change, but Wirtz is definitely going to be a player that all of you need to watch out for in the future. He's going to be a really talented player, 17 years of age, and as Arvind said, already 4 goals, 4 assists in the Bundesliga. Such a young player. But yeah, let's move on to the next player. Kind of stick with the Kai Havertz Chelsea team. I want to talk a little bit about a player that I think many Chelsea fans on football Twitter and in general will know, called Tino or Valentino Livramento. And I know that Zach and his team did a piece on Breaking Lines, I think it was a few weeks ago, something like that, about Livramento. But when I've watched Livramento play, I kind of see him as similar to like a hybrid between Hudson-Odoi and Lamptey, a player that has explosive pace to go forward, but is also really smart, has good football intelligence, and a really good dribble of the ball. I've seen it a lot of Premier League 2 games. Preferably, I saw the Spurs, it was 4-3, I believe, where Petr Cech had a bit of a stinker in that game, where Livramento kept coming in from the right and setting up to Tino Andrew and other players. But yeah, Livramento seems like a really talented player that has gone under the radar a bit, as I mentioned at the start. And a lot of Chelsea fans are maybe focusing on like Billy Gilmore, Angerin, Lewis Bate, a lot of these players. But I feel like Livramento is almost suited perfectly to Tuchel's right wing back position. He needs someone quite fast that can go up and down the wing and also provide a lot in the final third. And so Zach, I want to ask you a bit about Livramento. Do you think he has what it takes to kind of break the mold and kind of get into the next crop of Chelsea youngsters under Tuchel? Or do you think he's someone that maybe is not going to favour Tuchel's system and kind of he's going to be another player that Chelsea could look to kind of ship out on loan like Lamptey and a few other players?
Yeah, I think that I mean, first of all, just check out the article we posted today on Livramento, a very good article that explains his playing style and everything. I do think that he is probably very suited to playing as the right wing back. In Tuchel's system, he's able to provide, I think, what Hudson-Odoi has done, and yet a bit more similar, because unlike Hudson-Odoi, who I think is more comfortable playing on the left than the right, and who is a natural winger, he's not a wing back or a right back. Livramento is a lot more, I guess, suited towards that role, in staying close to the touchline and providing that width to stretch the defense. So I think that his ability to push high up and combine in the final third will definitely make him a good fit for that system. The question is not whether he suits Tuchel's system, in my opinion, but is there space for him in the Chelsea team? Because there's so many players who, like players like Christian Pulisic, who are barely playing, and who, frankly, there's just so much competition in this team. So even considering the fact that Cesar Azpilicueta, who was still, for the most part, a starter in this team, even considering the fact that he's I think turning 32 soon.
Yeah, he is, yeah.
So perhaps they'll try to ship him out, but I'm not sure about that, because he still provides, role in the experience. So I think that you have to. I'm not too sure if he will leave. So if he doesn't leave, where's the space for him? So I don't think that a loan for Livramento would be the worst thing in the world. I think that looking at just the amount of players he's going to be competing with, it might just make sense for him to just take one loan, just to, similar to Reece James at, what was it? Was it Luton Town, or I think it was
Wigan.
Wigan, my bad. Wigan, right? And you saw how much that loan benefited him. In terms of just playing regularly. I think he ended up being the club's player of the season, if I'm not mistaken. So without that loan, does Reece James, he's not a guaranteed starter anymore under Tuchel, but does he have such a smooth adaptation to first team football? I'm not sure. Look, Livramento, still just 18 years old. That's very young for a player. So I think that sending him out on loan for a season, that doesn't necessarily say that he doesn't have a future to play in Chelsea, in Tuchel's Chelsea. I think quite the opposite. It suggests that they realize his potential, and that he could be a quality player. So I do think that he is a very good fit for Tuchel's system. And I think that the article that we just posted does a great job of explaining that. The biggest question, though, is where does he fit in? I think that Reece James and Calum Hudson-Odoi are going to be competing it out, and having a tough, competition for that right wing back spot. Potentially, Tuchel decides to utilize Hudson-Odoi as a winger on the right or in left flank. On the other hand, that would suppose that one of the other attackers on Chelsea, perhaps someone like Hakim Ziyech would leave in the summer, or a year from now, and that would open up a slot for Hudson-Odoi to be moved to the wing and allow Livramento to compete with Reece James as a wing back. Obviously, this is supposing that Tuchel continues with his three at the back system, which isn't a guarantee either. But in general, I do think that Livramento is well suited. for the role that we've been seeing with Hudson-Odoi over the past few weeks at Chelsea.
Yeah, for sure. I 100% agree with you on the fact that I don't think Tuchel is going to stick with a three at the back. I know a lot of people are saying that they think he's going to stick with it because obviously 12 games, 9 wins, 2 draws, 3 draws, something like that. But yeah, it's looking really good with a three at the back at the minute. I don't think he's going to stick with it next season. I've never seen a Tuchel side in the past maybe play a three at the back. I've mostly seen in general play 4-2-3-1, 4-2-4, 4-3-3, something like that. All the different fours I always mention on this podcast. But yeah, in my opinion, I think that Hudson-Odoi is going to play more as a left winger in the future under Tuchel. I feel like Tuchel is having the kind of Dembele effect a little bit on him a little bit, and he's shown a lot of faith in him so far. So Hudson-Odoi is definitely going to be put a lot of faith whatever he wants to play. I feel like Tuchel is going to play in there. And when Azpilicueta kind of moves on in a few years, not preferably to me, but probably to Arsenal, as Arsenal kind of the elderly FC for Chelsea players. But Azpilicueta kind of moves on, I feel like Livramento will kind of come in as a as a yeah, I feel like yeah, I feel like Livramento will kind of come in as a right wing back to compete with Reece James. I don't think that Reece James kind of suits his right wing back position that well, in my opinion. I feel like he does have the attributes, but I prefer him to play DM or as a right centre back. But yeah, let's kind of move on, guys. We've talked about these 3 players that we think kind of can break the mold and kind of under the radar. They can reach top of world football one day if they continue to reach their potential. I'm going to go straight onto the quickfire round now. On Twitter, I ask questions in for Zach Lowy, and these are the responses I got back. I'm going to start with this question, Zach, from Josh Forrester. We're going to start on a bit of a light-hearted note, not too serious. We've talked quite serious about these different players. So I'm going to ask you, Zach, honestly, I want an honest answer on this. Are you a fan of Football Manager or Career Mode, and have you played them a lot in the past or right now?
So I have never played any Football Manager, and I feel a bit bad because the co-founder of Breaking Lines, Thomas Anderson, who's actually a big Chelsea fan, he gifted me Football Manager for I think it was maybe my 21st birthday or 22nd, but I never got it like working on Steam or something. I never had the time to like set it up. And honestly, I've always thought that like if I do manage to get hooked on Football Manager, I will just have no time whatsoever for like work or BTL or anything. I'm a bit scared. So I'm not sure. One of these days, maybe I will try Football Manager because I know a lot of people have recommended it to me. Career mode, I have had a lot of fun career modes with just some pretty random teams over the years, like Houston Dynamo, Venezia. And I remember there was funny. I remember playing with this Chelsea career mode, like I think it was maybe FIFA 14 or FIFA 15. And had this one guy from the academy who ended up being like an 87 rated, just like a world-class midfielder called Tika Musonda. So from the academy, and he ended up being
Musonda.
Yeah, Charlie Musonda.
No. He Charlie Musonda has like 2 brothers.
Right.
Charlie, I think, is still playing, but Tika Musonda, so he was, part of that academy, and he never really made it, but he was, I guess, a highly rated prospect on career mode back in the day, so yeah, he was just an incredible player on my Chelsea career mode, and then I just like fast forward a few years, I end up getting like a LinkedIn request from Tika Musonda. And so it turns out that he had like a ton of injuries and retired at a really really young age. Like I think he was like 26 or something when he retired.
Yeah.
Retiring and ended up working at Chelsea, becoming a scout, I believe, at Chelsea. So yeah, it was like pretty random getting a LinkedIn request from a guy who was like, my star midfielder for like a few years. I think that Charlie, I think there's 3 brothers, Charlie, Tika, and Lamisha, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm not sure if Lamisha is still playing. Charlie, I think, is maybe out on loan, hasn't quite kicked on it. But Tika Musonda, he is he retired, I think maybe last year due to injuries.
Mm.
And he's now, I believe, a Chelsea scout. So yeah, it was pretty
Wow.
random getting with.
That is insane. Out of all the players, you got the guy that you had a career
Yeah,
with and you made into an amazing player. That is just, what are the chances of that? That's like me playing with like, I don't know, like Ronaldo or something, and it just coming back. That's just mad.
yeah,
But yeah, I think Charlie Masunda right now, I've seen a lot of Chelsea posts about it that I think he's just come back from injury. He also had a really serious injury, a really injury-ridden career. I think it just runs in the family, to be honest. It's really sad with the Masunda family. But yeah, Charlie's just come back from injury. But yeah, we kind of spiraled a little bit off of that question there, Josh. But hopefully you still got your answer. You heard it here. Zach Lowy is a huge career, well, not a huge career fan, but you know what I mean. But yeah, this is the next question from Patrick Larson. I don't know if you know Patrick. Zach, he's a really great guy. Chelsea too. You know him?
yeah. Great fan of the show
Yeah,
for
yeah, he's
sure.
a great guy. Yeah, and he says, I'll read it the exact tweet out, not just the question. And my what? Zach is absolutely incredible. Great guest for your podcast. My question is, I've been hearing rumors of Chelsea's interest in. Please, Zach, allow my pronunciation of Chelsea's interest. I got a 7 in English, so just please allow me there. I've been hearing rumors of Chelsea's interest in AS Monaco's Aurelien Tishu Ameni. Does Zach think he would be a good fit at Thomas Tuchel's Chelsea side?
Sorry, do I think that Chouameni is a good fit for Chelsea?
Yeah, very quickly. It's 30-second round, but I forgot about that last time.
Okay.
Yeah, do you think he'll
All
be
right.
a good fit at Chelsea? I've heard he's really heavily linked as well. So yeah, do you think he'll be a good fit?
Yeah, I think he would make sense as a potential target. Conte and Jorginho are both getting up there in age.
Mm,
So I do think there is probably the need for that high energy kind of midfield destroyer who can also make that key pass.
yeah.
He's really impressed me at Monaco under Niko Kovac. This season, very good against PSG, stopping those attacks and covering a lot of ground. I think that he would be a great fit for them, and definitely a lower cost option to
Mm.
Declan Rice, for example.
Yeah, I think that I'm an Ethan Ampadu fanboy, so for me, I think we stick with Ethan Ampadu, man. However you pronounce this guy's name, I'm sure he's a great player. I haven't done much research on him, to be honest, Patrick, but you heard it here. Zach thinks he'll be a great fit, and he is heavily linked with us, so you never know. Next question, and it's the last question, but I've got a question for you as well, Zach, that is not on the thing, but I'm just going to ask you anyway. MK Johnson, Janska08 says, Fabio Silva has had an extremely difficult start to football in England. Do you think he will come good, and why should Wolves fans be excited?
Yeah, I mean, he has had a difficult start to his time in England. I think that obviously considering the price tag, which was pretty enormous for a player who not only was incredibly young but also hadn't really started much under Sergio Conceição at Porto. It was definitely high expectations for him. I think it was 35 million. But I think that he hasn't been that bad. It's just the fact that he's been being asked to for the majority of the season being asked to replace Raul Jimenez after his terrible injury. And he just isn't quite that sort of player. I think that Willian Jose is more similar to Jimenez in terms of his physical profile. But I think that on the back of Willian Jose's recent performances under Wolves, it should give Wolves fans to assurance that this isn't just a Fabio Silva problem. There was an attack. It's just a team problem. And I do think that Fabio Silva has probably done better given his form of the season and probably deserves a start. I think that he's probably been pushed into the deep end a bit, but players of his talent I think can eventually battle that pressure and I think that they can end up becoming great fits.
Mm,
So I think that they may need to end up tweaking the system just to fit Fabio's needs and profile. But I think that there's a lot of potential for Fabio Silva. He's getting into very good goal scoring positions and doing a lot with the ball. He needs to definitely improve both physically as well as in terms of finishing in front of goal. But I think there's a lot to like for Fabio Silva, and I think that if Jimenez doesn't end up returning to the levels we saw prior to his injury, I think there's potential for a very cool Portuguese attacking trio of Daniel Podence, Pedro Neto, Fabio Silva, potentially even Vitinha. But yeah,
Vitinha.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, Vitinha is a great player as well. But yeah, well answered. I've seen a lot of Fabio Silva, and when I see players, young players especially, I kind of think, is there potential there, or maybe as a young players they're not kind of up to physicality of the league. I saw that with a lot of Chelsea players early on last season. Mason Mount, he had a good start but kind of fell off a little bit. But with Fabio Silva, I do see quite a lot of potential. And yeah, I think that he is going to be a good. I think he's going to be a good player for Wolves in the future. But Zach, I want to ask you a question very, very quickly, just 30 seconds or so to summarize it. I just kind of want to ask you how you got into breaking the lines with your co-founder and how it all started and how it's going right now in 30 seconds and how you're going to do that. But, get into it, man.
So Breaking Line started in after my first semester of college. I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I was sort of in kind of a crossroads between like all these different subjects. But honestly, Thomas Anderson, guy who I had never spoken to before, a big Chelsea fan from currently living in Cardiff, had just messaged me and or tweeted at me like, "Hey, follow back. I've got an interesting idea for you." So he just proposed basically combining or transforming my threads into articles and just making a website. So I came up with the name Breaking Lines. We originally started with more like video content, but we eventually transitioned to articles. So we're really doing a lot of great article stuff, but we do have some video content coming up soon as well as a really interesting Euro related project. So it's just become pretty crazy over the past year or so. And yeah, it's amazing. It's blossomed to bigger than any of our wildest dreams could have predicted.
Yeah, really cool, man. I'm really interested in that kind of stuff as well. So yeah, it's really inspiring almost to see that you didn't really know what you wanted to do, and then obviously you turned your talent into a job. So yeah, it's really inspiring to see. But yeah, let's kind of move on to our last section of the podcast. And Arvind, what did you want to get into in the last section, mate?
So I wanted to get into sort of like youth academy, like this situation with them. Obviously, we've seen a lot of youth academies being separated from others. I'll just mention a few here: Chelsea, Schalke, Sporting Lisbon. All these players that are coming through the ranks. These are just a few examples. But Zach, what do you think separates other youth academies from creating great talent?
Yeah, no, those are some great names you mentioned. I'm not sure if I'd put Schalke in that same region, but I think that it has a lot to do with one. I would say quality of coaching, heavily in coaching, and that's one thing that I think that Chelsea have done a good job of. I remember hearing about from I think it was Mason Mount or Declan Rice maybe of how important Michael Beale was
Yeah,
in that
smart.
academy. And so the quality of coaching is obviously massive as well. Another thing is just pure, recruitment. A lot of these academies, Chelsea included, will, snatch up a player at 15, 13 years of age and, bring them to the academy. And so that's just, it's not good enough to just be, I mean, if you have the resources, it's not good enough to just be recruiting at a first team level, right? Scouring the globes for players who can improve your first team, but also improving your academy. And when you look at what Chelsea have managed to do, bringing in players from not just England, but from all around the world to improve their youth academy. I think that's something that's very impressive, and that helps them stand out from the rest. But that's not just Chelsea. That's whenever you look at academies such as Flamengo, Benfica, Sporting, Paris Saint-Germain, it's a common attribute. I think that also just having a really good facility, I think that's one thing that helps players, I guess, stay motivated and also just improve and continue their development at a quick rate. That's something that PSG, not just high quality, pitches and stuff, but also education. Being able to teach these kids subjects, off the pitch. I think that's something that's probably gone under the radar, but it's incredibly important. But yeah, I would also say, I mean, apart from the coaching and the recruitment, just having definitely a high quality facility. Benfica have spent a ton of money in improving their Seychelles academy. And also, I mean, providing the resources for a lot of these, lower income uh prospects to move into the academy, to have transportation. That's one thing that I wrote about with Renato Sanchez. He was from, one of the poorest areas in Lisbon, and he eventually the trip from his neighborhood to the Seychelles Academy was just too much, was like too long, so they arranged for him to move in to the Seychelles Academy, and that definitely helped him to kind of, I guess, live and breathe football, but also to be in a safer environment, and to be more connected with the club. So all of it is just, it's just kind of definitely a combination. If you're a 10 in one area but a 5 in the other, you may not have the same results. But I think that that's one thing that clubs such as Ajax, Chelsea, Paris Saint-Germain, Barcelona do a great job of, is combining that, meshing it together, and scouring across the globe in terms of trying to find good talents.
Yeah, for sure. 100% agree with that, Zach. Yeah, I saw a video of Billy Gilmore, like a day in the life of Billy Gilmore, and he was kind of traveling from he traveled and he moved houses from Glasgow to Nixa, Cobham, the Chelsea training ground, ironically around 20 minutes from where I live. But yeah, he kind of moved to Cobham to try and help his journey, ease his journey, because they were so set on him, on his talent, and now it's probably really helped him settle in and get an early passage into the team. He hasn't needed a loan, he hasn't needed anything, and he probably will have one next season. But yeah, he broke into team last season, played in the Liverpool game, in the Everton game. But yeah, let's kind of name some of these players out in the Chelsea youth system, other youth systems. Chelsea have obviously had the likes of Mount, James Abraham, Hudson Doy, obviously John Terry, but that was quite a long time ago. Schalke have obviously Manuel Neuer, Draxler, Ilkay Gundogan, Mesut Ozil. I think Sporting Lisbon's academy, you might have missed that one out of, and they've produced some really great talent. Cristiano Ronaldo, Paulo Futre, Luis Figo, sorry, Rui Patricio. But very, very quickly, Zach, I just want to ask you, like 30 seconds or something, which academy do you think really stands out for you? All factors included, the way they treat their players, the facilities, their talent that has come through, is the best in world football at the minute and will be the best in the sustainable future.
Man, it's really tough.
welcome
Um,
to the welcome to the podcast, man.
It's like, I actually saw, I mean, Paris Saint-Germain is one that I would definitely consider to be up in that top 10 for sure. But I mean, especially in terms of recent talents, but I actually recently saw a side-by-side comparison from the L'Equipe of players that PSG's academy have produced versus Barcelona. And when you look at that, I mean, Barcelona have a better crop. But that being said, given their recent uh I guess, talent production, I wouldn't put Barcelona number one either. Despite players like Elix Moriba and Ansu Fati coming through. Um, that's really tough. I might have to go with Benfica. Which is tough as well, considering the fact that there aren't really many, I guess, players who have gotten opportunities to shine in the first team, apart from Diogo Gonçalves, who is 24 years old and finally getting his opportunity in the first team after 2 loan spells. But you look at players such as Bernardo Silva, Ruben Diaz, Joao Felix, who are just thriving abroad. And they do have a convincing argument. Uh, I would definitely put Benfica, PSG, Barcelona, even Ajax as well. All of those definitely in the conversation, as well as Chelsea. You can't forget, have done a fantastic job. I would go as far as say they have the best academy in all of England. Um, and yeah, it's very tough, but I might have to say Benfica. I'm not sure.
Interesting. Interesting. That's really good that you come up with one that definitely that we hadn't thought of before. But yeah, from our research, we kind of figured out them ones. But I'm sure that Benfica is one of the best academies. But anyways, guys, I'm going to kind of wrap this up. Get some final thoughts from the guys. Arvin, I'll start with you. How have you enjoyed the podcast today? And as usual, what would you like to say to our audience, mate?
Yeah, it's been great. I feel like it's been a bit of a learning experience for me actually because
Mm.
I've never heard of likes of Benfica having the great academies. Obviously, I've heard of the players that have come through and stuff, but I feel like we've learned more about especially like Portuguese football. Obviously, Zach, I know you're an expert in that category. You even have your own podcast and stuff. So yeah, it's been a very interesting podcast. I've certainly enjoyed listening to Zach and you talking about youth academy and youth,
Mm.
obviously.
Yeah, it's been a really educational podcast to our listeners. I'm sure everyone has learned at least one thing today, probably a lot more, about all different youth players. Some of the players we mentioned at the start in the quickfire round, that Zach Lowy is in contact with Tika Masunda. That is a huge fact at the minute. But yeah, Zach, I'm going to end it off with you, mate. How have you enjoyed the podcast? And would you like to plug anything to say to us, anything to say to listeners? Your time now, mate.
Yeah, fantastic to be on the podcast. Really hope to be on again soon this season. And yeah, thank you so much for having me on. Definitely make sure to check out our articles on Breaking Lines. That's BTL Vid on Twitter. That we posted on that we're going to post this week on Valentino on Valentino Livramento, as well as Pedro Gonçalves, as well as check out our weekly Portuguese football podcast, Corta Linhas, that we've been having some incredible guests on lately. And so definitely make sure to check that out and subscribe to the podcast. And yeah, I hope to be on again soon.
Yeah, definitely going to be on again, mate. Potentially with another journalist or something like that in the future. We'll kind of get a little bit of a mix up there with us two as well. So, anyways, I'm going to sign up, guys. I've really enjoyed